Hi, my name is Dr. Donna, and today I want to talk about what it means to have a spiritual awakening. I think this is a very confusing term for a lot of people because they think that they're waking up to just spirituality and they're going to become more spiritual and they're going to understand the world better and feel more evolved or enlightened or able to cope with life better. And it isn't always that way. I also did a podcast on it, and I will post the link because it's on YouTube also. And my podcast is everywhere: iHeart, Spotify, Apple, Buzzsprout, etc. But I wanted to just sit and do this video, just like a good, few minutes of running through what it means to have a spiritual awakening. Sometimes they happen out of nowhere. Like my first spiritual awakening just happened. I had transferred up north to chiropractic school in the Bay Area, and I became fast friends with, I call her Kareem, not her real name. And she just introduced me to spirituality, and she forced me to use my psychic gift. And so the move was a trigger, but really there wasn't anything tragic at that time going on in my life that caused a spiritual awakening. It was just meeting a really cool person who, really influenced me. And so you may have a spiritual awakening out of nowhere where you start just looking at things differently and wanting to study energy work or spirituality, or, speak what it means to be a psychic, or your gifts will just pop out of nowhere. And so that can be kind of calming and that could be exciting. And it's like, whoa, I'm learning my path. But as you learn that path, you can start feeling different on your journey from people around you, especially if you're married and are in a committed relationship and your spouse isn't all into this and you are. It could create a separation. It can even cause a breakup. And so if you're going through spiritual awakening, don't try to force what you're learning onto anybody else. Just work on it for yourself. Figure out how it works for you. That is what's important, because so many people, they're like, well, I feel this. I want everybody around me to feel it. And maybe they don't want to. Maybe they're not interested. I have lost friends along the way from my spiritual awakenings. That does happen. And that is expected. So don't be surprised if your life changes as you do this work, because your energy is changing, who you vibe with changes. So it's just going to be totally different for you. It's a different life if you choose to go on this path. And eventually you find some like-minded people, but what you find in the world of spirituality is everybody's got a different perception of it. And not everybody's going to see it the way that you do. So it's not like it's just a universal acceptance and a universal belief. That isn't so. So do not expect that, and just kind of work through it on your own, what it means for you. Journal, get a coach, go to groups, join some type of membership or support group. Do something to really understand it, but don't push it on anyone or stress yourself out like you've got to be a certain way. Let yourself evolve into who you're supposed to become for you. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do spiritual work. You may do something that it's a career that isn't even spiritual, but you having this spiritual awakening really makes you even better at what you do. Whether it's an accountant or working at Starbucks or whatever you do, it makes you relate to people better and connect better, and people will feel very blessed to know you and you feel blessed to know them, and it could be a positive experience. There's so many ways to give for yourself and for society. So don't feel like, oh, I got to quit everything and become a spiritual healer. If that's your calling, do it, but feel no pressure on this journey. Now, I want to talk about another way that we end up having a spiritual awakening. And that could be a tragedy. Like when I had this scar, I was on the table and I was just having a bigger awakening, and my gifts even opened more, and it was just really hard at first. It was overwhelming, and then having the injury. So, if you have an injury, and then you have a spiritual awakening, and you got to heal from that injury, and then you're having a spiritual awakening. It's not like fun. It's a lot, and it's a lot to take in because you're just trying to heal your body from whatever injury you had. People have it with cancer. They have a spiritual awakening with breaking a bone. Just many ways that you can end up having it, and then you've got this illness to deal with, and then you have the spiritual awakening. And I had 3 surgeries along with the initial 160 stitches, and so it was a lot. And there was times that I just isolated, and I didn't work in office anymore. I started working the psychic platform because I just wanted to stay home and isolate. And it went on for about 6-7 months, and and then I came out of my shell and became outgoing again. But don't be surprised if when you go through something health-wise that you have this spiritual awakening and it's challenging everything around you. And then whatever other aspects come with having an illness, right? And then having a spiritual release, and then people are thinking you're wigging out because of the illness when you're really having this, evolving moment happening. And so it's a lot to take in. So yes, find support. It's wonderful. Now, back in 2004 when this happened, there's starting to be support, but not as much. And people were still trying to figure out what spirituality meant. We were starting to move past bypassing and avoiding emotions to start feeling them, because a lot of people will come to spirituality wanting to be unbothered, wanting to not feel, wanting to just live this life of bliss and not be bothered by problems. We're going to always have problems in our life. It's part of the human experience. So don't look to have a spiritual awakening to cause you to be unbothered or not triggered ever again, because you will be triggered. Something will trigger you. I still get triggered, but I know how to regulate, and so I regulate. But I like the ideal that I know that I could be triggered, so I'm not trying to be perfect, and spirituality is not about perfection. It's about really adapting to the human experience and making it more understandable, but not trying to be above it all. It's like, I see it as dancing with life more, dancing with the universe more. Now, another way that you can have a spiritual awakening is through a grief, a loss. It could be a loss of a job, a loss of, someone in your life dies that you care about. It could be a divorce. It could be a betrayal. There's a grief there. There's all forms of grief. I'm also a grief coach. So grief isn't just about someone dying. There's many ways that we grieve in life, and that can trigger this: what is the meaning of life? What am I feeling? How have I been living? Is this the life that I want to live? Do I want something different? How am I going to continue after this divorce? How am I going to continue after this betrayal? And it could trigger a lot of emotions. It can make you feel bad. It can make you feel like I wasted time. I invested in the wrong people. A lot of emotions. And so definitely seek some professional support. If you go through something tough like that and you're just questioning it all. And so do be prepared to really have a support system in place, because when you go through a loss or something big, it can just shake your world up, and then you're trying to figure out the meaning of life. So a spiritual awakening isn't just about, spirituality and metaphysics. It's about life-changing events coming more into consciousness. And that happens definitely after a grief event. And so don't be surprised if you go through that. So that's another way that you can end up having a spiritual awakening. And another way is when, trauma from childhood comes to the surface. Everything, all the pain that we try to bury, it just starts coming to the surface. I tell people you don't get over anything. You just bury it if you don't deal with it, because you got to feel it to heal it, right? And if you choose to bury it, it's going to come up one day. And it can be triggered by any of these events: a life event, a grief event, a health problem. It could be triggered, or it could just come up out of nowhere. It's coming to the surface. And that can trigger, why am I people pleasing? Why am I overgiver? Why am I having bad relationships? Why am I not happy? because all this trauma's come to the surface, and so you find yourself probably needing therapy or something. But that is a form of a spiritual awakening, because you're awakening to your life and you're trying to clear the path by healing through things so that you could live a more authentic life. You could be who you're meant to be, you know. And a lot of times when we go through all these things, we kind of lose ourselves. And so the spiritual awakening is a way to find yourself. Who are you? Not who people want you to be or who you think you need to be. It's who are you, and it's to make you more comfortable with yourself. Especially when you've gone through a lot, you're going to have this attitude of, I've worked hard to get here. I struggled. I suffered. I went through life changes. I'm going to be me, no matter how other people handle that. So something about a spiritual awakening is that it really makes you choose to be your authentic self. No more of caring about what people think, how they're going to respond to you. You become okay with people leaving your life. If they go, go. That's how you start to feel, because you're like, hey, I fought for this. I went through too much pain, too much awareness, too much growth, too much healing to be me. And I'm willing to attract people who accept me now, versus trying to keep people around who don't like who I am. So you start to move into a place of self-acceptance, self-love, self-worth, a lot of that solar plexus chakra work, because you've laid the groundwork with the root chakra and you know, the sacral chakra, and you're moving up the chakras, right? And now you're at the solar plexus with knowing your self-worth and knowing your value, and that you get to be your authentic self. And then eventually you're going to open up your heart chakra more to yourself, have more self-compassion, compassion for others, more understanding. And then you move into your throat chakra, right? You learn to use your voice more. When you go through a spiritual awakening, you just really speak your truth. And you're like, people feel how they want to feel about it. I really don't care. This is my truth. Especially if you couldn't use your voice as a child or in an abusive relationship. Now you're like, I'm using my voice. So throat chakra opens up and you're very honest. You're honest with yourself. You're honest with other people. And then you're going to move into your third eye, where you're going to have your own intuition. You may not decide to work as a psychic or a healer, but you become more empathic. You become more open. You can use your intuition to guide you in your own life if you're not going to do it with other people like I do. And so that opens up. And then your crown chakra, all that wisdom, awareness, growth. And so it's a full-on experience when you have an awakening in so many ways. And so this is what it means to have a spiritual awakening. It could be messy. It could be uncomfortable. It could be sad at times. It could be heavy at times. Remember, seek support. You know, if it's a hard time, it could trigger depression. But then eventually it's going to trigger inner peace. It's going to trigger, you know, more happiness, more calm, more gratitude, and more empowerment. You will get there, but you may not start off there, so don't be surprised. And just be prepared and journal along the way. You know, make note of how you're changing, how you're growing. It's very important to do so. And it will make a big difference, you know, in life. And I believe that we all go through spiritual awakenings at one time or another. Some people may avoid theirs. That's fine. That's their choice. And some of us have a lot of them for different reasons. And like my last one is when I moved up here to Sacramento. I just spent a lot of time alone, and I slept and I recharged and regenerated it myself. I felt rejuvenated, and I just felt at peace. Like I just didn't need much interaction or anything, you know. And I really got into the work of understanding, overgiving, people-pleasing, boundaries, all the things that I've taught throughout the years, and talking about spirituality more, because I was kind of stepping away from it, and now I've come back fully into it. And so I think that's what this last awakening is about. So they're fascinating. Some people write books about theirs. Maybe you're going to write a book about one of your awakenings or something, but they're nothing to be afraid of, but no, they're messy. And as I say, life is messy, and that's okay. And so this is the video. If you have questions, please comment, please like, share, subscribe, and I will have some links in the notes below. Thank you.